now it's time for another Pimpy's reaction video.
Yay!
On the reason we are here. So over the past few days, and Hakeem and I work together really closely and well, and I welcome him to the Senate as he welcomes me to the House, I think. Yeah, okay. Over the past few days, Democrats have warned the American people that DOGE is operating like a shadow government. Yesterday, I said that DOGE is not a real government agency. It has no authority to make spending decisions, to shut down programs, or ignore federal law. This is not debatable. This is an indisputable fact. No authority for spending decisions, to shut down programs, or ignore federal law. Yet Elon Musk took issue with that warning. He said, in answer to a tweet that I said that did this, he said, DOGE, quote, is the one shot the American people have to defeat bureaucracy and restore democracy. Now, give me a break. Nothing screams democracy like having a secret squad of company men pull off a hostile takeover of America's Social Security and tax information in the dead of night. That is not democracy, Mr. Musk. And yet it's precisely what DOGE is doing. It's letting a small group of unelected people, secret, run rampant through the executive branch, accessing the private data millions of Americans need, and God knows what they're going to do with it. God knows. So there are two dangers. One, people's privacy is at stake. Second, that there's a risk that this small group could cut program after program using one excuse or another. So today, Leader Jeffries and I are joining together to push legislation to prevent unlawful meddling in the Treasury Department's payment systems and protect Americans across the country. Our bill aims to do a few simple things. One, to deny access to special government employees that don't have to disclose their conflicts of interest or any other ethic agreements. Two, to deny access to anyone with conflicts of interest or lack of appropriate clearance. And three, include personal tax information into existing privacy protections. We call our legislation Stop the Steal. Whatever DOGE is doing, it's not democracy. We know what democracy's like. It's out in the open. It's not secret. You do two sides debate, and then the elected officials make decisions. Democracy doesn't work in the shadows. Democracy doesn't skirt the rule of law. And it doesn't give special privilege to the ideas and needs of a group of ultra-wealthy people at the expense of American families. Of course we should talk about reform. Reform's a worthy cause. Everyone agrees we should find ways to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of government. But you know what history shows? When it's done in the dark of night, it always leads to bad results. When these DOGE people decide to cut a program, have they even talked to the people who run the program? Have they even done a little research? Have they heard the other side? Or are they just in such rush to cut anything they can so that they can keep tax breaks and give deeper tax breaks to the wealthiest of Americans? Undoubtedly not. They are not checking. They are not debating. They are not doing things in sunlight. So, we want reform. We'd like to cut waste, but do it in front of the American people. Hear the arguments. Have the back and forth that has been the hallmark of this republic for over 200 years. You don't have a small group of select people who have little experience across the breadth of government have access to these records and an ability to cut funding. The American people have a right to be part of the debate as to what programs should be cut. And just because a small group of people think they know better than the American people doesn't make it true. So, we are going to do everything we can to sound the alarm and fight with everything we've got to stop this horrible, horrible act by this DOGE group with the, of course, the permission, acquiescence, encouragement of Donald Trump.
You're now the head of USAID. The head of DOGE, Elon Musk, called USAID a criminal organization and added that it is time for it to die. Do you agree with that?
Let me walk you through the history of this agency. It was created as a way of doing humanitarian assistance in the world, separate from the State Department at the time. But it said you have to take policy direction from the Secretary of State, the National Security Council, the White House, and all elements of government. They have basically evolved into an agency that believes that they're not even a U.S. government agency, that they are a global charity, that they take the taxpayer money and they spend it as a global charity, irrespective of whether it is in the national interest or not in the national interest. So they just don't consider that they work for the U.S. They just think they're a global entity and that their master is the globe and not the United States. And that's not what the statute says, and that's not sustainable. President put a pause on all foreign aid. We go to USAID, which is a big chunk of foreign aid, $40 billion or so. They're completely uncooperative. They won't tell you what the programs are. They refuse to answer questions. They try to push through payments. Even after the executive order, they were still trying to push money through the system.
Can it be reformed, or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is, we don't work for anyone. We work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator, and we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. This is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do that makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department, or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding, or that we have a lot of questions about, but they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
There's not always been the type of clear, consistent, and united response from leading Democrats that I believe, and you probably believe, the moment requires. Yes, there have been some powerful voices out there in the confirmation hearings especially, but overall, it's taken far too long, in my view, for elected officials to respond boldly. And when they do respond, those responses aren't often specific enough or bold enough. And it just hasn't been super clear all the time to me, or to probably all of you, what they're actually doing to push back on this hostile takeover. And that's a problem. But the good news is we have started to see some signs of life. Today, Democratic Senator Brian Schatz said he would place a blanket hold on all of Trump's State Department nominees until his administration's attack on USAID ends. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries announced that Democrats will introduce legislation to, quote, prevent unlawful access to that federal payment system that I just mentioned. Congressman Jerry Connolly, the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, is asking Chairman James Comer to invite Elon Musk to the committee's hearing on right-sizing government this Wednesday. And congressional Democrats held a fiery press conference today outside of the USAID building right here in Washington, D.C.
We are going to fight in every way we can. In the courts, in public opinion, with the bully pulpit, in the halls of Congress, and here at AID itself.
This is all a smokescreen, a shell game, in order to turn this government over to a handful of unelected billionaires and corporate interests, and we are not going to let them do that.
Just like Elon Musk did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
Okay, that's the fire. That's the life I'm talking about. Now, after that press conference, members even tried to get inside the shuttered USAID building, and I'm going to talk to one of those members, Senator Chris Van Hollen, in just a few minutes. So we're seeing some signs of life. There needs to be more, but they're trying. That's some encouraging news, some much-needed encouraging news. And we're seeing this not just among elected officials or politicians, but among unelected people, people who have spent their careers serving the public and have now found themselves caught in the crosshairs of this hostile takeover, trying to stand up for what's right. At USAID, yes, Elon Musk pushed the director of security and his deputy out, but not before they tried to stop Musk people from gaining access to restricted spaces at the agency. At the Treasury Department, a career civil servant was pushed out because he refused to give Musk's team access to that federal payment system that they eventually bullied their way into. And at the FBI, acting FBI Director Brian Driscoll refused a Justice Department order that he assist in the firing of agents involved in January 6 cases, reportedly pushing back so forcefully that some FBI officials feared that he would be dismissed. One FBI agent summarized what happened like this. Bottom line, DOJ came over and wanted to fire a bunch of J6 agents. Driscoll is an absolute stud, held his ground, and told White House proxy DOJ to F off. It's pretty bold. And look, when you're fighting against the President of the United States and his billionaire sidekick with vengeance, you are fighting an uphill battle. Let's be real. But they're still fighting. They're still standing up for what's right, even if it means putting their own jobs at jeopardy. And that is important, because at the end of the day, what these past weeks have made clear is that this takeover is going to proceed unchecked unless there are efforts to check it. In other words, there's no cavalry coming. You are the cavalry. Elected officials, governors, civil servants, all of you sitting at home, you are the cavalry to stop this. And we will be here, right here, to talk about what's happening. Where bolder action and voices are needed, we will call that out. We will keep our eyes open, we won't look away, and we will continue to shine a light on the people standing up for what is right. Joining me now is one of those people, Jake Strubing. He had been an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia since 2023 before he was fired on Friday because of his work on January 6 cases. And this is his first time speaking out since his firing. It's great to see you. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
I wanted to just start by asking you, it has probably been a crazy last couple of days. What have the last few days been like for you?
Well, they've been a whirlwind. As you mentioned, I have been with the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. since September 2023.
Mitch McConnell taken away in a wheelchair. Good. He's holding up a lot of what's going on with Trump. He's got a lot of influence. So it'd be nice for him to check out and let somebody else take over. So why are the Democrats fighting so hard to keep USAID open and to keep Elon Musk away from them? Well, one of the reasons is look how much money they send to the World Economic Forum. You know, the New World Order. They send them $35.1 million, but they're obligated for $52.2 million. You see here's another 16.1. For those who don't know who the WIF is, the World Economic Forum, they call themselves the New World Order. For those of you not paying attention to what's going on in LA, well, there's been a lot of protesters there. Most of these people are illegal immigrants from Mexico. I'm guessing they didn't think this one through. Pay attention. Yes, all they did is make it easier for ICE to round them up. The ones that are down on the road got boxed in and taken away.
This is all a scam. I mean, we got people that's getting ready to retire that's going to try to live off $2,000 to $3,000. Impossible. It's impossible. Because what happens, it comes up here, we spend it. We're $35 trillion in debt. We don't have union money. We're dead broke. And then taxpayers have $2 trillion in credit card debt. We are in huge trouble. In this body, we had better start figuring that out because we're going to have a run on this city here soon, and there's going to be about 150 million people coming up here saying, where's our damn money that we paid in? I could have put my Social Security money, 40 years, in tax in the market, and probably be worth 8 to 10 million today. But the federal government wasted it. So I'll get off my horse there. But it's good that we have this because we got, I get a little pension check from education. I was part of a union. It's not going to help people. People are going to have to continue to work longer and longer. Am I right, Ms. Gender? Can you say something about Social Security and it being taxed for some reason? We're taxing people for the second time on Social Security that they put into into an account?
Yeah, and I'd like to point out when Social Security was first founded, those who established it, it was started out as a 2% tax, and they said this will never take more than 6% of your income. Today it takes 12.4%, and depending on whether you go with CBO or Social Security trustees, it needs to take between 15.8 and 17.5%. So we're talking about thousands of dollars more per year. It also was actually only originally recommended that the tax be up to $66,000, equivalent in today's dollars of earnings. But over time, it has expanded massively, and the money has been spent every year. So whereas everybody thinks this money's been set aside for me, no, for the past 13 years, every dollar that has gone out of workers' paychecks has gone immediately to pay promised benefits. And that's what happens when you have a system that enables those in charge of it to spend the money in the immediate term and leave the buck to the next generation that's coming along. And because Social Security has grown so much, it's actually to the detriment of lower income workers in particular, who have to pay such a large share of their paycheck to Social Security. They have little left to save for retirement. And then lower income and African American workers have the lowest life expectancies. So they are the most likely to get nothing back in return. 1 out of 4 African American men will die between the ages of 45 and 64 after having paid into this system for decades, tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they might get nothing back.
What's the solution?
I think we ultimately have to shift towards a universal benefit system. That's what true social insurance is. It does not make sense that we are paying the biggest benefits to the highest income earners. So gradually over time, I think we need to bend down the benefits for the middle and upper income earners, actually increase them for the lower income earners. Look at things like indexing retirement age to life expectancy, more accurate inflation index. And I think that workers need an option to have their money in something that actually earns a positive rate of return and that can't just immediately be spent by Congress.
I have a 28 and 29-year-old, 2 boys, got a job, working hard, paying Social Security. They ask me all the time, Dad, will I ever see any of that money? Will they see it?
I think they will see some of it. That's the exact same thing I hear whenever I ask a group of younger workers, and none of them raises their hand. So I think that there will be something there, but it's not going to be what has been promised.
I got to thinking, there's MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. MAGA, Make America Great Again. But what we really need to do is make America follow the Constitution again. Motherfucker. That sounded better in my head.
This message is for Elon Musk. Just want you to know, Elon, that the American people support you 100% in everything that you're doing, with getting rid of the bureaucracy and the red tape and the unbelievable wasteful government spending that's been happening for many, many decades there in Washington, D.C. And I know I'm just one of millions of Americans who have been waiting for this day for many, many years. We never thought it would happen, but here we are with you in there kicking ass right beside the greatest president in American history, President Donald J. Trump. And I just want to say thank you, and hopefully I'm speaking on behalf of millions of other Americans.
He's the executive director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, Mike Benz. Mike, thank you for joining me this evening. Brother, we're hearing some pretty disturbing accusations about some of where our tax dollars have gone via USAID. Give us the facts.
Well, that's because USAID is one of the most disturbing organizations in the entire federal government. It may rank #1, in fact. USAID is under the cloak of being a humanitarian aid organization designed to advance U.S. foreign policy, is assigned the dirtiest tasks that the State Department can't get caught doing, and that used to be done directly by the CIA. But USAID is able to act as essentially a covert operations division in the way that the CIA used to, except it's not even bound by the requirement of a presidential finding to authorize a covert operation that the CIA does, which is why what you've seen for the past 2 decades is that most of the international scandals involving spycraft have had to deal with USAID rather than CIA. And if you understand the CIA's history with money laundering, you'll begin to get a glimpse at the size of the problem with USAID and why they won't let either congressional oversight or DOGE see their books.
So have they literally have struck gold of the gold of corruption, the massive bank vault that holds all the dirty details and secrets of the left and of the machine, maybe left and right, anybody complicit in basically selling out the American citizen and their tax dollars for nefarious actions, and it sounds like including the CIA. What is the CIA implicated in more details in what they've done?
Oh, well, I mean, just to your point first about the Democrat-Republican side, it's both. While USAID employees contribute 97% to Democrats, the more pernicious concern, so far as I'm concerned, is actually the blob Republicans, the internationalist Republicans who profit off of exploiting the American empire for their own private gain. For example, Bill Kristol, the famous never Trumper who likens MAGA people to terrorists, he is a part of an organization that receives millions of dollars from USAID. And so to the barricades, he goes to defend USAID. You find Liz Cheney was spawned out of USAID. USAID's sister group, the National Endowment for Democracy, has a Democrat organization and a Republican organization. And that Republican organization, the International Republican Institute, gets about $100 million a year just for Republican profiteering off of U.S. foreign policy. And the problem is far deeper than wokeness. And I want people to really understand this. When the National Endowment for Democracy, the constant companion of USAID and functionally interchanged, it was born out of a USAID memo in 1982 to give birth to the National Endowment for Democracy. But when they overthrew the government of Bangladesh 4 months ago in September 2024, these are leaked documents that were published in the gray zone just 3 months ago. The internal baseline assessment that the IRI submitted to the State Department was that the only groups that they could muster to form an opposition group against the sitting government were gay and transgender groups, were two racial minority groups within Bangladesh, and youth and student groups who predominantly listen to rap music. So what did they turn around and do? IRI, in tandem with USAID, they funded Bangladeshi rap groups. They funded transgender dance festivals. And they funded the local universities in order to push radicalization messages to overthrow the democratically elected government. But that was Republicans. That was the International Republican Institute, not the Democrats. And my concern is if this were just a partisan issue, there'd be no problem shutting USAID down. Because right now there's going to be a legal fight over whether you can shut USAID down by executive order. This is one of the main contentions right now that Democrats are vowing to fight. But if you couldn't do it through an executive order, you could do it through an act of Congress. The problem is it's going to be much harder to do it through an act of Congress because Republicans there, internationalist Republicans who do foreign policy for personal profit, can form a majority coalition bloc with Democrats. So that they can defect over to the Democrats and shoot down an attempt to legislate USAID out of existence. And the problem, again, is because they, either directly or indirectly, or their sponsors or donors, are on the take. USAID has infected the institutional architecture of every aspect of American society and world society. They have infected the media by USAID-sponsored media. They have infected social media by galvanizing advertiser boycotts and pressure to change social media algorithms. They've corrupted the prosecutors by USAID's work with prosecutors, prosecutor groups, and media groups to create predicates for prosecutors to take action. They've corrupted the unions. They've corrupted the public health institutions. They've virtually every layer from academia to civil society to the private sector to the media to the government is flowing through with unaccountable USAID bribe money to advance what's said to be U.S. foreign policy interests. But because Donald Trump ran on a foreign policy vision dramatically different from the legacy establishment, they used USAID as the tip of the spear to kill the domestic drivers of foreign policy, a.k.a. take out the guy who's running for president and his movement, and you won't have to worry about anyone challenging our foreign policy vision.
Wow, I gotta go. This is amazing. I need to have you back on really soon, Mike. But really quickly, if you can tell me in 15 or 20 seconds, has every past president for the last 20 years known about this corruption with USAID and just chose not to do anything about it?
Well, most of them are on the take. Joe Biden was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which directly oversees USAID. USAID was funding Burisma. USAID gave money to Burisma and had a formal partnership agreement with Burisma. Barack Obama's mother worked for USAID. The Bush family runs right through it. Bush's, Vice President Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney worked for USAID. They're all in on it. And this is the reason that the Trump revolution was so revolutionary, is because it defeated both sides of the USAID snake. And now we're going to see just exactly how the snake bites back when it's cornered.
I wonder if all of the lawfare and the everything that they threw at President Trump in his first term, the Russiagate, the collusion, all the stuff, I wonder if that was just to try to keep him on his heels enough to not look at USAID. But
wait, but that was a USAID thing
Mike
too.
Benz.
USAID funded a group called the OCCRP. Everyone can look this up. They paid $20 million to a group of hit piece journalists who turned around and dug up dirt on Rudy Giuliani and then used that as the basis to impeach the sitting president, Donald Trump, in 2019.
And one more thing before I wrap up, because I do want to get to these meetings and I will see you all at the EO signing later this afternoon. I would just say that you brought to mind California and North Carolina, who continue to be on our hearts, and the president and this administration are committed to ensuring that these individuals get the funding that they need. And I would just say a strong message to Democrats who are out there pretending to be outraged about the long list of crap that this administration is cutting, federal waste and funding, like $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, $20 million on a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. I could go on, and I'm happy to provide this list to every single one of you. Democrats are outraged that the American people want to be, they want their taxpayers going to good uses, not stuff like this. But then they're very quiet about the fact that there are still North Carolinians and people in California who have lost everything. And in the last 4 years, this federal government did nothing to help them. This president will continue to put Americans first. And I think the successes of this week so far speak to that. And it's only Wednesday. So I'll see you guys later this week, and we'll see you this afternoon.
Look, I got to challenge the premise of the question, Chad. You know me. I'm a fierce advocate and defender of Article 1. I mean, look, we are the reason the Founding Fathers put the Congress, the legislative. Look, I got to challenge the premise of the question, Chad. You know me. I'm a fierce advocate and defender of Article 1. I mean, look, we are the legislative branch. There's a reason the Founding Fathers put the Congress, the legislative branch, as the first article in the Constitution, and we're going to vigorously defend that. But what's happening right now, I think there's a gross overreaction in the media to what is happening. The executive branch of government in our system has the right to evaluate how executive branch agencies are operating and to ensure that not only the intent of Congress in funding mechanisms, but also the stewardship of precious American taxpayer dollars is being handled well. That's what they're doing by putting a pause on some of these agencies and by evaluating them, by doing these internal audits. That is a long overdue, much welcome development. That's what the American people demand and deserve. And that's what's happening. So we don't see this as a threat to Article 1 at all. We see this as an active, engaged, committed executive branch authority doing what the executive branch should do. They have broad discretion in all the funding, as you all know, because you follow this. When Congress funds an agency, they give broad discretion to the executive branch on how it's administered. They're using that authority right now in a way it hasn't been used in a long time. So it looks radical. It's not. I call it stewardship. I think they're doing right by the American taxpayer, and we support that principle. When it comes to the point of codification and legislation and all the rest, we'll be evaluating all those things. But right now, I think they're acting within the scope of their authority. There's be legal challenges. The courts will have some things to say about this. But as so far as I'm concerned, Chad, this is not a usurpation of authority in any way. It's not a power grab. I think they're doing what we've all expected and hoped and asked that they would do. For years, members of the legislative branch in Congress, Senate and House, have asked for details. They've asked for, the expenses of USAID. I mean, look, this is what was uncovered. 3 just quick examples. I mean, you tell me if this is unreasonable. Some of the stuff that the money was being spent on that we didn't even know. Crazy examples that came out. Look, $100 million on initiatives like expanding atheism in Nepal. That's what American taxpayers should be paying for? No way. Transgender operas in Colombia, drag shows in Ecuador? No way. The American people want us to, we have a $36 trillion federal debt. It is a serious threat to the future and security of our nation. We got to spend money better. And if this executive branch and this White House is going to take the initiative to dig in and find those details and expose them, We applaud it. We're all on board. Thanks so much.
So it turns out that the quote-unquote objective news outlet Politico has been completely and totally funded by USAID. This is one of the biggest scandals in, I believe, American news media history. So I'm scrolling down my feed and I see Benny Johnson had posted a screenshot that basically said that USAID had funded Politico to the tune of $8.9 million, I believe it was. This is why Politico could not pay staff yesterday. This is why they basically are about to shut down, because they've been completely funded by USAID, which has taken American tax dollars and basically funneled them to various far left and left-wing organizations. Now, we knew that was going on, but what we didn't know is that they were funding quote-unquote mainstream news outlets. Political writers are trotted all over to CNN, all over to MSNBC, all over to every other mainstream outlet that you can think of, and they are presented as objective reporters. Now, when you hear conservative influencers like me or Benny Johnson or Tim Pool or take your pick talk about how biased and corrupt the mainstream media is, this is exactly of what we speak. And this is the most egregious, the most scandalous example of this I can really think of in recent memory. This is why Politico can't pay people. This is why they're likely about to be shut down, because Democrats were using yours and my taxpayer dollars to fund a quote-unquote legitimate news organization that was basically nothing but left-wing propaganda. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about how deeply corrupt the mainstream media is. I got to tell you, this is shocking to me, and I think the reverberations in news media, I'm telling you, we will feel them for quite some time. This is a major scandal.
Want to see a Democrat say the quiet part out loud about USAID and admit they were conducting illegal activity?
It supports freedom fighters everywhere in this world.
That is a crime. That is absolutely a fucking crime. It's also not something USAID is authorized to do. They are not authorized to fund opposition to other nations. In fact, nobody is, because it's fucking illegal. Now, it's something we get accused of doing all the time, and the CIA pretends we don't, but we do. At least the CIA pretends we don't do that. They don't stand out there and give a speech and talk to the people and say, hey, they're stopping us from doing this illegal thing. That alone is good enough reason to shut down USAID. Thank you for saying the quiet part out loud, Senator.
Here is another department in our government that's on their hit list. They're going after the education department because they're going to do an audit to these people just like they do every other department.
Depending on us to win all the things. NEA, we have to win all the things. All the things. All the things. Our colleagues are depending on us to win all the things. Keep going, NEA. To preserve our democracy, we must win all the things. Delegates, we won't go back. We will keep going forward because we are the NEA. We are the NEA. We are the NEA.
Speaking of wasteful money, thank God that Trump is going to investigate this for Californians.
One of the things I want to investigate rapidly, because I've never seen anything to this extent, the train that's being built between Los Angeles and San Francisco is the worst managed project I think I've ever seen, and I've seen some of the worst. Billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars over budget. In fact, I read where you could take every single person that was going to go on the train and get the finest limousine service in the world and take them back and forth with limousines, and you'd have hundreds of billions of dollars left over. It is the worst thing, and we're going to start an investigation of that because it's not possible. I built for a living, and I built on time, on budget. It's impossible that something could cost that much. And now it's not even going to San Francisco, and it's not going to Los Angeles. They made it much shorter. So now it's at little places way away from San Francisco and way away from Los Angeles. No, we're going to start a big investigation on that because I've never seen anything like it. Nobody has ever seen anything like it. The worst overruns that there have ever been in the history of our country.
into a campaign and then be given access, full access to the Department of Treasury of the United States of America. We are at war. We will not take this. We will fight back.
We all now know USAID. They're screaming about Elon Musk over there, but hey, George Soros and his boy are okay. You know, they scream that we're all a threat to democracy when they've been systematically dismantling democracy before our eyes. They've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and there's no going back. So I would tell my colleagues across the other side of the aisle, take your salty tears and sit right back down.
I'm sorry, I just want to taste your tears. Your tears.
Something is really, this is irritating the crap out of me. I don't understand it. Why was America and the Democrats, why were you guys okay with America and the performance of America for the past 4 years when Biden was your president? But when you get someone that's in the presidency that's doing something for you, then you have a problem with it, and you make all kinds of news clippings going against a man that's fighting for you. I don't understand that. Please help me understand. When somebody wasn't doing anything for the past 4 years, why was America okay with the performance of the man in power for the past 4 years? But you're not okay with someone that's actually performing. Please help me understand that. Please. Thank you.
We are not going to sit around while you go ahead and desecrate our Constitution, or you look at the laws that have been passed into law and say, never mind, we'll just ignore that. Instead, we are going to be in your face, we are going to be on your asses, and we are going to make sure you understand what democracy looks like.
Are any officials here preparing to fight Democratic lawmakers in the streets?
Absolutely not.
So some
And
of these,
thanks for the question.
some elected Democrats are so steamed about DOGE. Congresswoman LaMonica McIver says we are at war. Ilhan Omar says we might actually see somebody get killed. And Chris Van Hollen says we have to fight this in the Congress. We have to fight this in the streets. So what now?
And may I just point out, if you heard that type of violent, enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by these Democrat leaders, and frankly, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk, vowing that Elon was going to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here. And for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable for that rhetoric.
They are raiding the government, attempting to steal taxpayer money.
Oh, it's taxpayer money.
That's what the situation
that they stole
at the Treasury Department is all about. We will introduce the Stop the Steal Act in short order to prevent unlawful access with respect to the Department of Treasury's payment system connected to people who are trying to steal personal, sensitive, and confidential information.
And the American people, mark my words, the American people will not stand for an unelected, secret group to run rampant through the executive branch. Being innovative is good. But, Mr. Musk, this isn't a tech startup. These are public institutions that deal with things like Social Security and Medicare and national defense and provide for the well-being of the American people. And the American people have a right to be part of that debate. The elections occurred, and one viewpoint got a few more votes than the other, but that doesn't mean we throw out democracy. That doesn't mean what's been done for centuries in this country should just go out the window and be substituted by a small group of people who think they know a lot more than the wisdom of the American people.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the weekly report. Audit USAID, then shut it down. As of this writing, when you attempt to access the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID website or social media pages, you are informed that this site can't be reached. The media reports that the new Trump administration has not only frozen USAID activities, but may be planning on bringing it back under control of the U.S. State Department. Other reports, including statements by Elon Musk, suggest that it will be closed completely. If true, the closing of USAID may be one of the most significant changes President Trump has made among the many dramatic actions in his first couple of weeks in office. Many Americans may still have the idea that USAID is a government agency delivering relief at disaster sites overseas. They may still remember the bags of rice or grain with the USAID logo on them, but that is not USAID. USAID is a key component of the U.S. government's regime change operations worldwide. USAID spends billions of dollars every year propping up NGOs overseas that function as shadow governments, eating away at elected governments that the U.S. interventionists want to overthrow. Behind most U.S. foreign policy disasters overseas, you will see the fingerprints of USAID. From Ukraine to Georgia and far beyond, USAID is meddling in the internal affairs of foreign countries, something that would infuriate Americans if it was happening to us. When President Trump ordered a 90-day pause in USAID activities, we quickly learned just how pernicious the agency really is. The U.S. media reported that Ukrainian press outlets were scrambling to keep their doors open when the U.S. dollar stopped flowing. It is reported that 90% of the media outlets are funded by the U.S. government. This means that there is virtually no independent media in Ukraine, only fake news outlets willing to toe the U.S. administration's propaganda line. Does anyone think these wholly U.S.-funded news outlets would ever publish a story that the U.S. government did not want published? This is plainly immoral, but it is also dangerous. Most U.S. mainstream media stories about Ukraine have their origin in the reporting of the local media. From battlefield news to casualties to the state of the Ukrainian military, the news from Ukraine is being written by U.S. government-backed media outlets and then picked up by U.S. and other Western media. It is a closed propaganda loop that not only propagandizes the U.S. citizens but also feeds false information into U.S. government outlets, such as Congress, that rely on mainstream U.S. media reporting for their news on Ukraine. No wonder so many in Washington continue to support this hopeless war. But USAID is not just the business of disinformation. Elon Musk recently reported a New York Post article on X reporting that USAID bundled $53 million to Echo Health Alliance to support gain-of-function research on coronavirus at the Wuhan lab. Did USAID help fund COVID? Americans have a right to know. In natural catastrophes overseas, Americans have shown themselves to be extremely generous. Private volunteer assistance organizations can most effectively assist victims of disasters worldwide. USAID needs a full and transparent audit Americans deserve to know exactly what is being done in their name. Then the agency needs to be shuttered completely and its employees sent home. That would go a long way toward making America great again. Thanks for listening.